It is a land with a phenomenal story. The birthplace of man, from which modern humans evolved more than 250,000 years ago. Accounting for 1/5 of the world's land. And with a modern history that has witnessed devastating conflicts. It is the continent of Africa. From expansive deserts to lush green rainforests. From deep valleys to towering mountains. It is the world's second largest continent. 54 countries, 1.2 billion people, and 2,000 languages. Mother Africa, famed for its wild animals with more than 1,000 species of mammals. Home to ancient cities and peoples with long traditions and histories. Awash in riches, from its abundant resources to its innovative peoples. This is a continent with diversity. Welcome to Africa. The Sahara Desert, legendary. Its endless undulating sand dunes stretch across most of North Africa, covering an area the size of China. This is the classic image of the Sahara. Impressive, beautiful. Sand dunes that rise as high as 150 metres, dune after dune. They stretch into Morocco. Harsh, heartless sands, with not a drop of water visible, and yet people have thrived here for many centuries. With its Berber and Arabic influences, camel trains still cross this land, conjuring up memories of a time when they were used to carry supplies. An essential trading tool that has been used for centuries. These days, camel trains are more likely to be used to carry tourists. Certainly a more modern and faster way of traversing the dunes is by quad bike. Group tours allow adrenaline-seeking visitors to power up and down the sandy slopes. Their desert experience quite often capped off in a desert campsite. These camps are of a traditional Berber style, tents pitched in an oval shape to allow cooking, eating and socialising in the protected centre. For the past 4,000 years, Berbers have roamed northern Africa, living in a nomadic farming culture that has thrived until recent times. These days, Berbers have integrated into contemporary societies, but practices from their daily routines continue in camps like this. Typical of the settlements the Berber farmers would have moved into is Marrakesh. The fourth largest city in the Kingdom of Morocco, Marrakesh is a sprawling city that was founded in the year 1062 by the Almoravid Empire, a Berber Muslim dynasty. The red walls of the city were constructed 9 centuries ago, with red sandstone quarried locally. Marrakesh and other Moroccan cities like Fez mirror the country's land, which has been ruled by a series of independent dynasties since the 8th century. With French and Spanish protectorates being declared just over a century ago. That ended in 1956 when Morocco gained independence and installed its previously exiled monarchy. These days Morocco has remained relatively stable and prosperous by regional standards, exemplified here in Marrakesh, where the old fortified city is packed with vendors and their stalls. Out in the desert, a series of vivid blue-painted rocks stand out amidst the barren desert floor. And those blue rocks are, in turn, set off with smaller painted rocks, red, yellow, orange and pink. A Belgian artist, Jean Veremy, painted these as a tribute to his late wife back in 1984. It was a project that was consuming in terms of the time it took to complete and the amount of paint he used, 18 tonnes in all. For artist Veremy, painting just one collection of rocks was not enough. His blue paint has been daubed far and wide across the Moroccan desert. The colour blue also dominates the northwestern city of Chefchaouen. Shades of blue colour many of the buildings in the city. Some postulate that the blue keeps mosquitoes at bay. Others think it symbolises the sky and heaven, a reminder of Islamic spiritual life. While others claim it was painted blue back in the 1970s as a tourist attraction. These days, the easygoing vibe in Chefchaouen attracts many European tourists, especially from neighbouring Spain. One prominent landmark in this region is Le Chapeau de Napoleon. Translated, it means the hat of Napoleon, an impressive rock spire that overlooks the little town of Aguadudad. Many visitors to the town can walk to the summit of Le Chapeau de Napoleon, offering exceptional views over the boulder-strewn landscape that surrounds it. Tracking through groves of palm trees leads to a wonder in architectural terms. It's the historic fortified city of Ait Ben Haddou. Considered a great example of a Moroccan settlement built with clay bricks, rammed earth and wood. UNESCO has honoured this place by declaring it a World Heritage Site. It was originally built in the 11th century, a prominent stopover for the camel trains travelling between the Sahara and Marrakesh. Today, Ait Ben Haddou is sparsely populated, with only a handful of families still living here. In the north of Africa, bordering the Mediterranean Sea, sits the state of Libya, where treasures like this abandoned village have withstood modern conflict and the ravages of time. Poised on top of a major spur in the Nafusa mountains of northern Libya, much of the country's Berber population once lived in this region. The Berbers have occupied northern Africa since the beginning of recorded history. In fact, the term Berber is the ancient Roman word for barbarian, although their descendants these days have injected a distinctly sophisticated air to the functions within the old village walls. Only a decade ago, these mountains saw fierce fighting during Libya's civil war. But today, peace prevails. And the ancient abandoned village of Nafusa remains evocatively positioned on top of this Libyan wilderness. Travelling south, the waters of the Upper Nile are flowing fast. These cascades are in Ethiopia, one of the world's oldest countries, the country from where the great ape, the hominid of 4.2 million years ago, was discovered. This is the Blue Nile, providing 80% of the water that will flow into the river it merges with, the northern White Nile. The Nile is the longest river in the world, running along the borders of 11 countries. It is the major waterway that has allowed Egyptian civilization to flourish since ancient times. While Ethiopia's Blue Nile waterfalls gush across 3 separate falls in the wet season of August and September, they slow to a trickle in the dry season. Falls carry water from their source, Ethiopia's Lake Tana, and are known as Tirza Bay in Ethiopia, translating to Great Smoke. The Blue Nile waterfalls, Ethiopia's best-known tourist attraction, and the focal point of a water source that irrigates and sustains much of the African continent further north. Another of Ethiopia's wonders are its volcanoes. This is the Dalol volcano, known for its unearthly colours and mineral patterns. Dalol has been described as a natural system of exceptional beauty and aesthetic importance. It's been created by congealed lava that has erupted from a single vent and spread across the surrounding moonscape. That lava has been blown violently into the air, mixing the magma with salty deposits. Surrounding the volcano are hydrothermal vents where superheated water bubbles to the surface. The acidic waters also turn some areas a bright green. No life here, that's the finding from a group of French and Spanish scientists who studied the deposits recently. Further afield, a vast collection of salt pillars and terraces, a landscape, along with the Dalol volcano, that attracts hundreds of tourists every year. Then there's Ethiopia's most active volcano. This is Erta Ale, and it's always active, the result of 3 tectonic plates tearing themselves apart in spectacular fashion. volcano is famous for its rare, persistent, bubbling lava lakes, which lie below its billowing clouds of smoke. Like all shield volcanoes, it's relatively low, only 613 metres high. Locally, the area around the Upper Nile volcano carries an ominous title, the Gateway to Hell, because temperatures in the surrounding region reach over 50 degrees in summer, dropping to a hellish 40 degrees in winter. West of Ethiopia on the west coast is one of Africa's smallest but wealthiest countries in so many regards. It's the former French colony of Gabon. Abundant in oil, Gabon is financially one of Africa's wealthiest countries, 4 times wealthier than most African nations, even though the population is only 2 million people. Here in Gabon's Loango National Park, there's an abundance of lush rainforest, surrounding lakes filled with water warmed by hot equatorial temperatures. Gabon sits astride the equator. This has been described as Africa's last Eden, the jewel in Gabon's crown, and the country's most famous national park. There's a wealth too of experiences. Take to a safari vehicle and you'll encounter wildlife aplenty. There's the elephants of Gabon. They're forest elephants, the elusive smaller cousin to the more familiar savanna elephants found elsewhere in Africa. Gabon is Africa's largest population of forest elephants, and while rangers protect them here, poachers have killed many to the north, with some 25,000 elephants killed in recent years. These forest elephants of Gabon forage on the salty savannah right through to the Atlantic coast. It's a long untouched part of Gabon, a wilderness that is now a strongly protected area for conservation. Further south, one African nation with enormous diversity is the former Portuguese colony of Angola. A green interior with long rivers. This fisherman is motoring up one of the longest waterways in Angola, the River Kwanza. From sea to source on the Bai Plateau is a journey of more than 1,000 kilometres. But it's a territory that is also home to some of Africa's major wildlife species. That includes elephants. Before 1970, as many as 70,000 elephants roamed across Angola, one of the largest populations in southern Africa at the time. But Angola's 27-year civil war, human encroachment on habitat, and high levels of poaching have meant that only 3,400 have survived. Also living here are giraffes. Roaming the savannas are the Angolan giraffe, a subspecies that is relatively lighter in colour. Conservationists are gaining traction in protecting both the elephants and giraffes these days, with the giraffe population now numbering some 13,000. One feature in Angola that has remained constant through the conflicts has been this collection of lunar-like formations. Known as the Miradora de Lua, these yellowish ochre rock cliffs stand in stark contrast to the bright blue seas of the Atlantic Ocean they border. Take care when you drive here though, with the wreck of this blue Angolan taxi testimony to the dangers here. The wreck remains a vivid contrast to the tri-coloured cliffs surrounding it. Venture inland, upriver from the Atlantic coastline, and you'll reach the Angolan capital of Luanda. This is Angola's biggest port, with the abandoned ships of bankrupt companies line its waterways. Luanda is a city of impressive landmarks in a country that is home to 30 million people. Informal trade is still conducted in the time-honoured way through sprawling street markets. Angola has a divided population. While some have grown rich from oil, many people still live in poverty in chaotic informal settlements, resulting from Angola's history of colonisation and the disruption of the Civil War. But on Luanda's doorstep is the relative paradise of Masulo. The beaches here are semi-deserted, brightened by the colourful mosaic patterns of the salt farms. Flocks of pink flamingos abound here. This colourful display is matched at dusk with equally bright and pink sunsets. Eastwards from Angola, other creatures are stirring. In the Serengeti, herds of wildebeest are taking part in one of the world's biggest annual migrations. The Great Wildebeest Migration involves more than 1 million wildebeest, a truly spectacular event in which lion and croc attacks are common. Across Tanzania and Kenya, they're on the move with the heavy rains of November, chasing the rainfall in their search for greener pastures. Water is certainly the place that hippos gravitate to. This big group of hippos has hauled out on the banks of a Kenyan river. Not only are these mammals semi-aquatic, but they're also herbivores, eating about 1.5% of their body weight in plants every day. Elephants too are attracted to these waterways. This elephant has partially submerged itself to get closer to the foliage on the riverbanks. One place where wildlife abounds is further south in the veld of South Africa, a country with a remarkable history. Grassland and bushland that's been likened to the prairies of the United States or the outback of Australia. In South Africa's case, the veld supports huge populations of wild animals. To get up close to that wildlife is one of life's richest experiences. Board a safari vehicle around the Kruger National Park and you're taken into the thick of the action. Operators use open four-wheel drive game viewing vehicles to get visitors in close. One of the great pleasures of these game drives are the bush lodges. Intimate retreats where one can recharge before heading out into your own private game reserve. Elephants are one of the first species you'll see. There are some 24,000 elephants across South Africa, up dramatically from the 150 a century ago when they were hunted almost to extinction. Across all of Africa, though, there are some 400,000 elephants, well down from the 10 million that roamed here 90 years ago. Other tour operators take to the water, an opportunity to get up close to the many giant crocodiles that swim here. These are Nile crocodiles that swim in fresh water and can be found over much of the African continent. Another migratory animal here are the zebras, distinguished by their striped black and white coats. They're quite sociable animals, these zebras, travelling in small harems to large herds. Rhinos are another creature you'll find around South Africa's Kruger National Park. Rhinos, along with lions, elephants, buffaloes and leopards, make up the Big Five, the most dangerous animals to track on foot. Rhinos have survived on Earth for over 50 million years and once roamed through North America and Europe. Today, numbers remain under threat. Wildlife viewing is safely conducted from open-style safari vehicles. Animals see these vehicles and its occupants as one large block rather than separate entities, which is why this leopard appears unperturbed. Lions too are in healthy numbers in South Africa. This pride rests after a day of hunting. Aside from South Africa's huge game parks, a substantial part of the country is given over to grapes. It's in the region outside the southern city of Cape Town that wine production is concentrated, benefiting from the coastal influences of the Atlantic and Indian Oceans. Wine has been cultivated in this region for the past 4 centuries, with wine tourism these days a big and booming business. Estates are substantial, and there's a new generation of winemakers who are producing wines that are increasingly better in taste and substance. Wines that are not only high quality and complex, but also exciting. South Africa has some spectacular vineyards, producing spectacular wines. South African winemakers have a real passion and talent, creating wines that are powerful and concentrated, others that are fresh with restrained oak flavours. South African wine dates back to the year 1659, when Cape Town's founder, Jean van Riebeck, produced the first bottle. These days, output is prolific, with South Africa rated amongst the top 10 wine producers in the world. The coastline of southwestern South Africa is rugged, formidable. Pounding waves have helped shape this coastline, a process that's been going on for 160 million years. Ever since continental rifting tore Africa away from the ancestral landmass of Gondwana. South Africa's oceans, the Atlantic and the Indian Oceans, are teeming with marine life. Sightseeing vessels filled with eager visitors head seawards to take in the marine experiences. Along the garden route on South Africa's southern tip, there's the chance to see many dolphins. This is a region known for its wild beauty. allowing visitors to get up close and personal with the ocean's most curious playmates. Humpback whales are also making a stunning comeback in southern Africa. Where whaling once drove humpbacks to the edge of extinction, new survey data suggests there are far more whales than anyone expected. It's been estimated that more than 30,000 humpback whales now journey across the Western Indian Ocean, up from the 600 or so in the late 70s. One city by the sea that is a jewel in South Africa's crown is vibrant Cape Town, South Africa's second most populous city in a country with a turbulent history. 130,000 years of it, leading to Dutch colonists in the 18th century, the bloody Anglo-Boer War, and the notorious apartheid regime. Cape Town is guarded over by a magnificent flat-top rock, Table Mountain, a prominent landmark attracting thousands of visitors every day. The main feature of Table Mountain is its level plateau, which measures 3 kilometres from one side to the other. It is indeed a dramatic backdrop to Cape Town, a colourful city with colourful buildings. It's thought that the magnificent mountains have been taking shape for over 800 million years, with Table Mountain beginning to form 280 million years ago, 6 times older than the Himalayas. Cape Town is also famous for its welcoming climate, with its beaches packed during the warm summer months. Many people here are descendants of the first inhabitants of the Cape area, the Khoisan, followed by the Bantu people. But now Cape Town's 4 million inhabitants form a melting pot of cultures. One novel way to explore Cape Town is by motorcycle sidecar. This tour starts down by the surf with the spectacular backdrop of Table Mountain and the formidable mountain range that towers over the city. The motorcycles used in this tour are Chinese models from the 1950s that once travelled the streets of Shanghai. South of Cape Town, a 2-hour drive along the coastal road runs along the cliff's edge, leading to Africa's southernmost area, including the Cape of Good Hope. It's in this region that African penguins have proliferated. In the settlement of Boulders, a colony of 2,200 African penguins have made a home. The beaches of Boulders have been taken over by this species, known for their barking brain call. This colony began with the introduction of just 2 breeding pairs 40 years ago. These days, the colony is filled with breeding pairs, with eggs and newborn chicks commonplace during breeding season, which peaks between March and May. Thankfully, this forward-thinking country protects its oceans and coastal zones in its constitution in an effort to protect its rich biodiversity. South Africa also goes to great lengths to preserve its history, but not just in the books. People wanting to experience a bygone era can board this historic train, Robos Rail. Luxury carriages from yesteryear are hauled en routes from Cape Town to the inland city of Pretoria and into the game parks. What they'll pass through is a rich diversity of landscapes, the fabric of the South African wilderness. Helicopters provide another very personal form of transport, taking travellers to remote regions far off the beaten track. It's this sort of intimate flying that allows passengers to spot flocks of sheep running together in open woodlands. Then there's planes like this Cessna Turbo Stationair. Aviation enthusiasts delight in flying this across South Africa's more remote backcountry. It's in the air they could have come across even more adventurous flyers. Maximum exhilaration here for the pilots of these motorised hang gliders as they power just above the water on this run downriver to the sea. Travel away from the sea and rivers and you'll find the capital of Johannesburg, a city that has undergone a metamorphosis. Under apartheid, native Africans employed on the hundreds of gold mines were banned from living in Johannesburg. They were forced to live in segregated informal settlements outside Joburg. Known as the Southwest Townships, this was abbreviated to Soweto, a city in its own right that stood independent until the mid-90s. These days, Soweto has come of age and with the formal integration into Johannesburg, is now a thriving metropolis. Soweto has an incredible community feel, and Sowetans welcome tourists who can explore by pushbike or by tuk-tuk. Visitors go on a trip through time, helping them to understand South Africa's racially segregated past and its exciting and dynamic future. Part of this tour is through the streets surrounding Nelson Mandela's former home. These days that home has been turned into a museum. Mandela lived here for 16 years from 1946 and returned here to live for 11 days after he was finally released from prison. Further south, the city of Durban is dominated by the impressive Moses Mabhida Stadium. All manner of sports are played in this glistening white stadium, from rugby union and cricket to football and motorsports. Sporting enthusiasts certainly make the most of South Africa's great outdoors, Whether it's biking, abseiling, bungee jumping, or ziplining, there's a whole country waiting to be enjoyed. On the water, groups of kayakers paddle through pristine valleys, while surfing has a big following, especially on the west coast. Of all South Africa's stunning mountains, it's the Drakensberg that takes pride of place. This is the eastern section of the Great Escarpment, stretching some 1,000 kilometres and rising up to 3,500 metres. One of the geographical wonders of the northern Drakensberg is a feature known as the amphitheatre. And Sentinel Peak. The Sentinel Peak hike takes adventurous travellers to South Africa's highest waterfall, the Tugela Falls. As it cascades down the vertical cliff faces of Sentinel Peak, visitors are reminded that this is the second highest waterfall in the world, just behind Venezuela's Angel Falls. Tugela Falls is made up of 5 separate falls with a total drop of almost 1,000 metres. Inspiring waterfalls can be found all over South Africa, offering a rejuvenating and peaceful experience for all who visit. There's certainly a mesmerising beauty in watching these falls, an inspiring high point to Africa. From its northern tip to its southern cape, from prehistory to modern times, Africa is a continent of diversity and complexity. Its contemporary challenges are met by incredible human feats and spectacular scenery, with dizzying displays of nature. Africa, the birthplace of man, continues to overcome and flourish.